Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Freya. I'm a knitter living in Glasgow with my wife, Lina, and my two cats, Kiska and Anouk. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my winter knitting plans, and I'm going to be showing you if I did or didn't manage to knit all of them. Spoiler, this is my most successful knitting plan, seasonal knitting plan ever. I pretty much managed to knit all of them. I think I've knit a lot. I've been away for a long time, and I just want to jump in and recap a couple of things that has happened since I last podcasted, which was quite a long time ago. So I released my first pattern, the Southside sweater. If you missed that over on Instagram, I released that just before Christmas, which is crazy. I can't believe that's actually done and released. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about it too much in case you've already heard about it, but it's a drop down shoulder sweater, and it's knit with a DK held with a fluff. You can use an Aran if you don't want to use like a lace weight fluffy Mohair or Alpaca. I'm just going to show you my version. I believe in my winter knitting plans I was going to knit one for Karina, which I did end up doing. I will post some pictures somewhere of the photo shoot that Karina did of me and I did of Karina. But yes, so as you can see, it's just got little details on the cuff, the hem and the neck. So I am going to be doing a 25% discount on the pattern for maybe like 2 weeks. I don't know. I'll put the dates below just because I did a discount at the beginning, like when I first released it over on Instagram, but obviously if you missed that, then you missed the discount. So I'm going to do an even bigger discount for you because I've not done a podcast in so long and I feel so bad. So yeah, 25% off. I'll put it in the description and on the screen. So yeah, that was my first release. And I'm also working on 2/3 designs. I've already written and test knit one of them, which is a machine knit water bottle cover. But I've decided to push that and release that at the end of this year towards like the colder season because I feel like I missed it, and a lot has been happening in my personal life that has just gotten in the way of that. But I'm going to show you my other 2 designs, and I'm about ready to call for testers for one of them, which is exciting. And yes, I shall show you it now. So it's another jumper, and I've called this the VV V-neck because it's a double V-neck. It's a V-neck in the front and in the back. It's again a drop down shoulder, but with a bit more of an interesting design, and I cannot tell you how long it took me to come up with a construction that actually worked and that I could write into a pattern and that people could understand and that would actually fit on the body. So yeah, long story short, I had to make sure I could do short rows at the top, and I had to figure out how to not make it sort of pull up at the bottom in the middle, because it's not got like the structure of the back to sort of hold it up. It ended up, every single construction that I tried ended up pulling a little bit at the bottom. So I've done short rows at the bottom, and I've done a tiny bit of short rows on the sleeve for a little cap. So yeah, I have spent so long grading this essentially. So I have graded it, I've written it, and I'm ready to call for testers, but I really want to do a tutorial video for it, but I think I might do a call for testers before I do that because it might take a while. I did also do a tutorial video for the Southside, so if you're interested in what techniques I used all my favourite techniques and sort of mashed them into one jumper, which is why I'm so proud of that jumper and I love it. It's like my perfect jumper. So yeah, if you're interested in what techniques I used, then you can watch a tutorial video before you think about buying the pattern or whatever. So I'm going to do the same for this, and I should be calling for testers pretty soon. I think I'm going to do a dedicated video where I call for testers for this and my next design. Oh, this is, I knit this using 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held double. This is the JC Rennie Super Soft 4-ply. It's quite a thin 4-ply. I think it's 246 meters per 50 grams, but it's super lightweight and it blooms. So even though it's like a thin 4-ply, it blocks out and it blooms to be, you know, a normal 4-ply or held double, just a normal DK, which is why I like this, because it's lightweight. It's 100% lamb's wool, so it holds the shape really well. So there's not the weight of it pulling down and falling off your shoulders, but it's got the structure to stay on your shoulders, if that makes sense. It's just the perfect yarn for this, and it's not too expensive either, which I love, and the quality is just crazy. And I usually use this for all of my machine knit like jumpers and everything on the machine, and it's actually what this is made out of. This is 1 strand of Super Soft by JC Rennie on the knitting machine though. And I self-drafted this, and I would love to release that as a pattern, but I feel like it's quite hard to, like, I don't even know if there's a market for it, but it doesn't really matter because I want to do it for me. It's not really about the money or being popular or whatever. But machine knit patterns, I feel like there's not a lot. There's not the same standard, and you know, there's no real, you follow this way of writing and that's how you do it, which is kind of how like hand knitting patterns are. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So that's my next design that I'm pretty much ready to go. And my other design, which I've only got a little swatch for, is going to be some colourwork socks. So this isn't the final yarn that I'm knitting up, and I bought some different colours. It's a like kind of creamy off-white colour and a red, again like this, but just a bit nicer. This is just some sock yarn I had lying about to do the gauge swatch to see if I liked it. So these are runes, and they spell out love is love. And I just had the idea one day. I've been really in the mood for colourwork socks, and then I had the idea of what I wanted, and I couldn't find a pattern for it, so I made a chart. I seen, you know, do I like it? I knit a swatch and I love it, so I'm going to go ahead with that. I've already graded and kind of written the pattern. Still need to finalise that, and I need to knit my final like pair of socks to take pictures of, and you know, people can see if they like it or not. But shouldn't take too long, so I should be able to call for testers soon. So yes, the reason why this design means a lot to me is because my mum's side of the family is Arcadian, and I spent every summer holiday there, so you know, that is definitely like part of my identity that, you know, I'm really proud of. And also I am a proud lesbian, so spelling out love is love in runes is kind of like the perfect, you know, marriage of 2 parts of my identity, and I hope you'll like it as well. So that's my other design that is in the making. Okay, end of design talk. Now I'm going to talk about other people's patterns. So I've done a lot. I have kind of slimlined and only want to show you the most interesting things, but all my stuff is all over the floor. I've got 2 finished jumpers, I've got 2 pairs of socks, I've got 1 scarf, and then currently working on 1 whip. I'm a monogamous knitter now. I only have 1 long-term whip on my needles, and even then I only need to do like this much on the bottom of it. So yeah, that's been so nice to get rid of all my whips, finish them, and just focus on one thing at a time. So let's start off with. I've got my notepad here. I think we'll start off with the Farnham Sweater, which is by the Knit Pearl Girl. This was again on my winter knitting plans, and I finished it. I should have taken some videos of me wearing it, and also Karina got me a mic for Christmas, and I hope the quality is better, but it's quite hard to put it anywhere that it'll actually pick up my voice. Anyway, it's kind of annoying me that it's here, but that's another story. So yeah, this is a Farnham Sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. I knit the first size, but I was slightly off gauge, so it's slightly bigger than the measurements would usually be if you followed the right gauge from the pattern. And I didn't make really that many changes, if any. The only things I really changed was the length of both the body and of the sleeve. I made them both longer. And for the neck, I think I knit it a little bit shorter, and I knit it on, maybe smaller or larger needles than she gave in the pattern. I cannot remember, but literally that's it. I actually followed the pattern pretty much to a T, and I really love this. This has become my favourite jumper to wear out the house because it fits underneath coats, it's warm, and I just think it's like an elevated basic, and it goes with a lot of things in my wardrobe already. So the yarn that I used, so I held two yarns together. I held Ching Fibre Fjord with a drops Mohair for both of the stripes, and I will have the colourways below because I cannot remember, but I love how this turned out. I think it looks like a latte or a coffee or something like that, and I've kind of been obsessed with dark brown, like a chocolate brown, and I really want to buy a jumper quantity of a proper chocolatey, darker than this brown to make a jumper, but I don't know what jumper yet. I just know that I want a dark brown jumper. So this is actually only my second striped jumper, I think, and yeah, I think so, and I really love it. I didn't think I'd like a striped jumper as much as what I do. Usually I'm like I don't really like too busy things, like I don't really like prints or anything like that, but I think because it's a neutral and it's not too over the top, I think it works really well. And I do really like the yarn combination. I've used the Ching Fibre Fjord for a couple of different projects. I knit the Elizabeth blouse by Petite Knit in, again, one strand of Fjord and one strand of Drops Kid Silk, and I really love that. That's one of my favourite jumpers as well to wear out the house. And I've knit a lot of socks, doing like holding one strand of Fjord and one strand of a Mohair. I've knit a lot of I'm Ecstatic socks by Cool Stitches using that yarn combination, and I love it. I think the Fjord is also a light fingering in the same way that the JC Rennie one is, and it's a lambswool nylon mix, I think. So it's actually like a sock yarn, but it's non-superwash, and I really like it. It's the same kind of, it's got sort of the structural integrity of like a rusticy wool, but it's not that rustic, and it's quite soft. So I definitely recommend that yarn, and also this yarn combination. Again, it's light and it's not too heavy, like as in weight wise, it's not too heavy as well, in the same way that the JC Rennie one is. And I don't really have much else to say apart from I've knit a couple of the Knit Pearl Girls patterns before, and the only thing that I would say about them is that they're very wordy. If you're not into that, then you might struggle a bit with her pattern rating, but if you maybe haven't done a technique before and you want to buy a pattern that's going to hold your hand and teach you and really give you all of the information about it, then I would definitely recommend her patterns. I feel like it's not just a pattern, it's also like a lesson in that jumper or that item, the construction, or she talks about everything to do with what size to pick and everything like that. I can't remember exactly what she talks about, but I know that she talks about a lot of stuff. So if you're into that, I'd recommend her patterns. If you're not into wordy patterns, maybe it's not for you. But at the end of the day, I'm able to sort of pick out the information that I need, but it is a bit difficult at times, but it is doable, obviously. So that is my first finished jumper that I wanted to show you. So let's jump on to an accessory before I go on to my next jumper. So again, on my, I was gonna say Christmas wish list, that's not, winter knit list. Knit list? Plans? Winter plans list is the Berlin scarf by, I can't remember. I didn't write it down. I was meant to look and write it down, but I didn't, and I don't know why. But I'll have it in the description. So I knit it. I have been wanting this for ages. I actually got gifted the pattern by someone, to thank you for that. And I finally got around to knitting it. So this set, I will put a video on because it's so long and I can't really show you. And I don't really want to put it around me right now with this on. But I knit this using one strand of Drops Air. I can't remember what the colourway was. I got this a long time ago. I actually initially bought this yarn to hold with another yarn to make my favourite things knitwear, a jumper by her, and it's the one that's got loads of holes in it. And I can't remember what it's called. But I did like, that's like one of like the only jumpers or patterns that I bought on the day of the release and cast on, like had bought the yarn and was ready to cast it on as soon as it got released. But I ended up really not liking the process. I'm not really a lace knitter. I get bored quite easily and it takes up too much mental energy, and also I hate troubleshooting lace. Like if I make a mistake, I find it pretty much impossible to like jog down to it and then knit up like in the same way. Like if it's a stockinette, if I make a mistake, I just, go down to the stitch and then re-knit it. Like it's a lot simpler than if you do a mistake in lace, and it's just too much. It's not fun for me, is what I've found out about myself. So I ripped that out, and then I had basically the perfect amount for this scarf. I'm not the biggest fan of this colour anymore, but I think it still works with, like, it's still neutral enough for it to go with my coats and a lot of my outfits. Like the Farnham jumper, I feel like this goes quite well. And I've got one like sandy colour trench, and I actually recently sewed my first trench, and that's like a chocolatey brown, and it goes with that as well. And then my other coat is like a grey, and it goes with that as well. So actually it's fine, but it wouldn't be my first choice of colour now. But let's talk about the yarn. So it's Drops Air. I think I've only used Drops Air once or twice before, and actually I don't know if you can see it in the shop, but I knit is it called the December bow by Petite Knit? I actually didn't buy the pattern. I used a Sophie scarf and I just tied it in a bow basically. So I knit that with that, and I love how it worked with that because it's not too heavy and it holds its shape, and I put it on the top of the Christmas tree every year and I keep it up there. So, but I have heard that it pills like crazy. So I feel like I don't know if I would want a jumper with it, because I will talk about this with my next jumper pattern actually, is that going forward I'm going to think a lot more about how yarns wear over time and really take that into consideration when I choose the yarn that I want to knit with going forward, because I want my knits to last and to not pill and to not look, to lose its shape or to look really raggedy really fast. Like, I want them to look brand new forever. And also it is kind of a waste of money to buy a jumper's quantity to knit a jumper and for it to only look good for a couple of months of wear, and then after that it kind of looks old. I'd rather invest and knit less or using nicer yarns, or not nicer but yarns that will hold up over time, than to knit really fast and buy maybe cheaper yarn that won't last as long. You get the idea. Anyway, so I feel like I don't think I'd have liked to have made a jumper out of this, but I think the scarf is going to be fine because it's not going to have the friction of me moving my arms or whatever. It's literally just going to be wrapped around me and I'm just going to take it on and off. So it's not, I feel like, obviously I've only worn this a couple of times because I've really only just finished it. I feel like it won't wear as badly as what a jumper is what I'm trying to say. So yes, and also I think the yarn that she used in the pattern is a blown yarn in the same way that Drops Air is. It's like a tube and then they blow like alpaca fibres into it. So it's quite light, which works for this because it's massive. I believe I knit this even longer than the pattern as well. I basically just knit until I ran out of yarn because I didn't really want any leftovers, and I also really wanted a massive long blanket scarf essentially, which is exactly what I did. So the pattern is great. I love how she managed to write it and the techniques that she used to do the fringe. This is the first like fringed scarf that I've made, and I feel like since I could be wrong, but since she put out this pattern, a lot of other designers are doing exactly the same thing with the fringe. I don't know if she was the first, probably not, but I think she really started the trend, and I really like it. It wasn't too time consuming or tricky. They are essentially just I-cords at the end of the day with a couple of setup rows, but it's so clever and it works so well, and I think it's so effective. I really love it. And it was a lot of knitting. This is like, it's just a whole jumper's worth of knitting essentially. So it's a lot of knitting. It's not really that fast. Saying that, I did knit this quite fast. I think it was on relatively large needles. I think I used a 6.5mm. I think in the pattern she uses a larger needle size, but I didn't want to go up any more than a 6.5 holding one strand of Drops Air because I didn't want it to be too holey, because the holier and the looser the gauge, the more likely it's not going to hold up as well because the fibres aren't as tightly packed and they're not supporting each other essentially. So yeah, I didn't want to go too much of a bigger gauge for this, and I think it's the perfect gauge actually. I went back and forth about whether or not this yarn would work with this pattern because a lot of the people that use Drops Air and have knit this pattern before me, like I was looking at the Ravelry projects, they held Drops Air with another yarn. Like a lot of people held it with a Mohair, and I didn't have a Mohair to hold with it. I didn't want to buy any more yarn. Like, I think the reason why my knitting plans have been so successful is that I planned them with yarn in mind that I had in stash already. Like I wasn't going to go out and buy a lot of yarn just to knit these plans. I actually had yarn in stash, so I didn't want to go out and buy more yarn for this. And it worked out really well. Like I thought it would maybe be it wouldn't work without that extra bulk of the mohair, but I would knit it exactly the same again. I wouldn't hold it with the mohair. I like how light it is, and the gauge worked, at least for me. And it's pretty much the same dimensions as well as the pattern. So yeah, it worked. If you're thinking of making this with just one strand of drops there, it works. So it's doable. So that's that. I love it. I've worn it. I think it's perfect. I would maybe change the colour, but apart from that, it's perfect. So moving on to my next jumper. So my next finished object that I want to talk about is a petite knit pattern, and it is the zipper sweater. And this is the one project that has showed its age so quickly, and I'm so annoyed, but I have worn it like pretty much every day for a long time, so I'm not surprised that it is showing wear, but the wear is just crazy. So this is the jumper. As you can see, I don't know if you can see how much it is showing its wear, but I have de-pilled this and it just keeps going and going and going, and I've just embraced it at this point. My cat does like to knead my my jumpers, and she has felted this bit a little bit, but I'm not going to stop her from having fun, and I knit things to be used even if it's by the cats. So yes, this is actually the second time I've knit this. The first one was for Karina, and I actually used exactly the same yarn combination, and I do love the fabric it's made, but I just wasn't prepared for how much it would show its age and show the wear. But it is so soft. So the yarn that I used, one strand of drops Lima and one strand of drops brushed Alpaca. I think the drops Lima, I'll have it in the description, but it's one of drops wool and alpaca mixes. It's either the DK weight or the Aran weight version of it, and the brushed alpaca is like a brushed alpaca. I've not got it here to show you, which is probably very annoying, but you can look it up and I will link it in the description. So I held those two yarns together. I knit a sort of mix match of size 1 and 2. I can't remember exactly how I merged them together, but I used the stitch counts from both of them for different parts, if that makes sense. So I did do a couple of modifications in that sense. I think in the pattern, it doesn't tell you to go down needle sizes for the cuff, but I did because I wanted it. The sleeves are still oversized, but I'm trying to be a bit more mindful of how useful a jumper is in terms of like, I love the look of an oversized sweater or jumper, an oversized sleeve, but it's just not practical to have your sleeves, like the cuff, really oversized because it just gets in the way. So I've been trying to knit jumpers that are a bit more close to your wrist so they don't get in the way. So I went down a couple of needle sizes for the cuff, and I also did the same for the hem, which they don't say to do in the pattern, and I also did some waist decreases as well. So that is something that I also changed. I think I knit it exactly to the same length because I wanted this to be super warm because it's a high neck. I was like, what's the point of making it cropped? Like, I want it to cover my whole back and keep me as warm as possible. So that's kind of why I've been wearing this a lot around the house, is because it's been so cold and it's just been the perfect jumper for that. So I'm not too bothered about walking around the house looking not great, but it's still annoying. So the zip that I used, if you can, I can't really see what you see, but the zip that I used is actually a star. I don't know if you can see that. I'll link where I got it from in the description. I think they sell on eBay and Etsy. I looked for ages and I didn't know what zip I wanted. I knew I wanted a metal one and I wanted it to be a bit fun, a bit different. And when I was looking for zips for Karina, I was seeing ones that had interesting zip pull ties, zip pulls, I don't know what they're called. But in the end they wanted like a more simple one. But when I made mine, I wanted one that was a bit more fun, and I settled on the little star because I really like the colour, the goldy colour with this beige yarn, and yeah, I like that it's a little star and it's fun. So that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about. Again, petite knit patterns, they're great, I love them. I will continue to knit them, even if people think that's boring. I love them. There's a reason why she's so popular, and I would recommend that pattern. I'm not sure I would recommend the yarn unless you're making something that isn't going to get a lot of wear in terms of like the friction, you know, maybe a piece of homeware or an accessory or something like that, or a jumper that you're not going to wear a lot. So the rest of the pieces I have now are accessories. I have one whip that's a jumper. So I'm going to jump into my socks. These were also on my winter knitting plans, and I've knit 2 pairs of socks. So this is I've not washed or blocked these because I've been waiting to wear them, but I finished these a couple of months ago and I've been longing to wear them, but I've just not, because I wanted to show them on camera. So they look quite silly. They're so small. But these are the Lima socks. Is it by Paula Strict? Is that right? I think that's who did the Berlin scarf as well. But I've spoken about this pattern before. I've knit it a couple of times now and I really love it. I just love it. The construction's interesting. It fits my foot really well. It's got quite a deep like heel. And I've got quite a deep heel, so it fits me really well. And it's a rib sock, so it hugs the foot really well. So there's not really much to say that I haven't said before. The yarn I used for the contrast is Coops Knit Soxia in quartz, I think the colourway is, and the main colour is a hedgehog fibres yarn. I'm not sure of the colourway, but I've already knit 1 pair of socks using this colourway before, and I had enough to make another pair of socks holding it with a contrast colour. I think, I could be wrong, but I think you get a little bit, they sell it as 100 grams, but I think you maybe get over 100 grams in the skein. So I've managed to get 2 pairs out of it, so that's really nice. The hedgehog fibre sock is probably my most favourite, or top like 3 favourite sock yarns. I think the quality is really nice. It's soft. They've held up pretty well. I accidentally sort of felted 1 pair because I used to put my socks just on a normal cycle with the rest of my clothes. But over time I realised that it wasn't great. Some of them were getting smaller and smaller. And yeah, so now I use all of my socks and then I do a big wool wash in my knitting machine, and that works perfectly fine. I wash pretty much all of my knitwear in the machine on a wool cycle and I've never had any issues. Yeah, but that's just my washing machine, so maybe don't listen to me if your washing machine is different. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on those. my other pair of socks that I finished is another pair of I'm Ecstatic socks by Cool Stitches. This, I think, is my 4th pair, I think, of that pattern, and I love it. It's a fingering weight held with a mohair. So this is actually Sandnes Garn Sunday held with Sandnes Garn Tynn silk mohair. I actually bought one skein of each because I really wanted to test out that yarn and the yarn combination. So I just bought one ball of each, and I think I was planning on making a pair of mittens, but I never got round to it, and I wanted to knit another pair of these socks, and I thought I'm going to try out that yarn combination even though it's not a sock yarn. So I don't know how these are going to wear, but I don't wear my socks out the house in shoes. I just wear them in the house. So they don't get a lot of wear anyway, but because it's not a sock yarn, I don't know how long they're going to last, but I'm very interested to find out. So the yarn combination, the Tynn silk mohair is not the softest mohair that I've used, but I was interested because it has wool in the composition. Like usually a mohair doesn't have wool in it, it's just mohair and silk usually. And I think that the wool content reflects in how it feels. Like it's not the softest. I think it's maybe even on par with Drops Kid Silk. I'd have to hold them side by side, but yeah, it's not the softest, but we'll see how it wears. And Sandnes Garn Sunday, I have actually used that once before, but that was after that I bought these 2 yarns. But before I knit this, I used it held with Rito hobby mohair. That was like the bright green wrap cardigan. I'll put a picture. And I really like that yarn. It's soft, but it's not like this is going to change your life kind of yarn, but it's really nice. It feels good quality. I've not worn that jumper enough to tell you how well it wears. It feels like it's going to wear okay, but I also knit a jumper, actually a cardigan, using Double Sunday held with a mohair that one of you very kindly gifted to me, that was probably definitely one of my favourite mohairs that I've ever used, if not my favourite actually, probably mohair that I've ever used. Yeah, I held those double for that cardigan, and that cardigan hasn't held up that well, and it's not the mohair that's not held up well, it's the Double Sunday. It pills like crazy and it still hasn't stopped pilling. I've worn that to death but it's so soft, but it pills like crazy, so I don't know if that's going to be the same for the Sunday. We shall see. So yes, that's that for that. My next accessory is actually the Sophie Hood, I think it's called, by Petite Knit, and it's over there, so I'm going to go and get it. So this is the Sophie Hood by Petite Knit, another one of her patterns. I bought this pretty soon after she released it, actually. I wasn't going to knit it, but I had yarn, quite a lot of yarn left over from knitting Karina's Southside. This is Zakami DK Organic Merino, held with the Laceway Alpaca silk in the colourway The World Is on Hold. The DK weight was a undyed. And I held those two together to knit this. I think, I can't remember what size I knit now, but I was slightly off gauge and I did do a slight modification as well. So, well, the reason why I wanted to knit this pattern is because I've knit three actually big Sophie shawls. I actually bought the Sophie scarf pattern. I knit, I think, 3 Sophie scarves. Then I just used I used the same pattern, but I changed the rate of increases and I knit 3 Sophie shawls. And then I keep wearing my Sophie shawls by putting it over my head and wrapping it around. So it essentially is like a hood scarf, but it doesn't cover my whole head, and it does end up looking a bit silly, I think. So when I seen that she did a Sophie Hood, I was like, well, that's perfect. And I probably could have self-drafted the hood part, but at this point, I felt like just following a pattern. Sometimes I find it really enjoyable to make up my own pattern and self-draft. Obviously, like I've self-drafted quite a lot. But sometimes I love following a pattern and just being like, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do, I'll follow it, and I know that it's gonna work. And that's what I wanted to do. So I bought the pattern and I knit it up, but I did make a few modifications. So I was off gauge, so my row gauge was shorter, so I had to knit more rows in order to get the same measurements. So I did actually end up changing the hood in terms of like I knit more rows in each section, if that makes sense. And I also added some increases along the face. So when I wear it, it sort of comes further down at the top, just because I wanted it to cover like basically more here, to have more coverage here, because I've knit a couple of balaclavas now. I can't remember what pattern I used for that actually, but in that balaclava pattern, it does have the face shaping where it's further down here and it shapes, so it sort of goes around the face nicely. And I really like that about the pattern. So I did end up adding increases on this side at the same time as doing the decreases on this side to get the hood pattern. And yeah, I'd definitely recommend the pattern. Well written again. I think if you're into and you like the challenge of self-drafting, you could probably do like if you've got the Sophie scarf or the Sophie shawl, you could probably self-draft it. I know that Cool Stitches actually did a video where she self-drafted it completely, but yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously there's a massive conversation right now about, you know, people have been illegally sharing PDF knitting patterns, and it does, I don't know, it's interesting because one of the reasons why I got into knitting was because of the J.W. Anderson Harry Styles cardigan, and all like basically what drew me to making my own clothes or knitting or whatever is the fact that I could replicate high fashion or big brands for like a fraction of the price, and I could end up wearing clothes that looked like designer clothes without buying designer clothes. And then where do you draw the line with seeing a knitting pattern that somebody's made and instead of buying it, you replicate it by making your own pattern? Personally, I have done that, and I think it's okay so long as you don't write up the pattern and then start selling it as your own. So yeah, other people might have different ethics and morals around that, but I think it's fine. I mean, if somebody did that with my Southside, I feel like it's fine. Like, I can't stop you from doing that. And I think if you enjoy self-drafting and you see my pattern and you're like, I want to do that, then on you go. Like, at the end of the day, I mean, personally, I'm not in it for money, so it's not really gonna affect me so much as if it was like my full-time job. So yeah, I don't really want to talk about too much. I don't really talk about politics or anything like that because I don't want to split people and start having conversations about politics, because I'm just not the most educated in that. But yeah, all that to say, you know, if you have the Sophie scarf or the Sophie shawl or whatever, you enjoy the what's the word? I can't think of the word. If you enjoy self-drafting, then you could probably do it yourself. But I would recommend the pattern if you just want to follow a pattern as well. And so that is it for the whips that I want to show you. There's been a couple of like, I can't even remember, like it's been so long since I've done a podcast, but those are like my most interesting ones I wanted to talk about. And I just have one whip to show you that I really am excited about. So I can't remember if this has been on any of my plans do's. It feels like something that I have put in a plan to do because it's been on my like favorite like wish list on Ravelry like since it has to be a couple of years now. It feels like a couple of years. I don't even know when the pattern came out, but it feels like a couple of years. And this is actually a project that I bought yarn for. I just really felt like I've not actually bought yarn in such a long time. It feels like I think the last time I bought yarn was for the VVV neck, and then since then I've not really bought yarn, and I fancied buying yarn, casting on a jumper that I wanted to knit for a long time, and just treating myself and have fun. Because I have worked through a lot of my stash recently, and I just felt like it. So this is the, and I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Jeju, the Jeju jumper by Eggyo Knit. I have it written down here, but I don't know how you pronounce it. But yes, I have knit quite a lot of it. I'm currently on the ribbing at the hem, and I'm just about to actually finish that, and because it's a split hem, I'm about to go onto the front and do the split hem on that side. So I have quite a lot to say about this pattern because I have changed quite a lot, actually. Pretty much every step of the way I have changed something, and so far I don't know how much I would recommend the pattern, but everyone's different and you might really like the techniques that she uses. You might really like her writing pattern style. Personally, for me, it feels like it's not been test knitted, or it's not even being like professionally edited. It feels like, yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to describe it without you also reading the pattern, but something just feels like it's not completely finished. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but, and also the techniques that she uses as at each point, I've never done before, and I was quite skeptical of that. So I don't think it's wrong for me to describe how she does the parts, because I'm not giving you like stitch counts or the actual like written technique. But so it's a drop down shoulder design, and she starts off with the back, and you cast on the amount of stitches for the neck, and then for each row you cast on a number of stitches at each side. So it essentially it ends up looking like short rows. Like it gives the shaping of like that, which a traditional drop shoulder with short rows at the back, that is the shape that you want to create. But you do that by increasing, and I think there's only 6 rows of increasing, and this is quite a small gauge in terms of like, I can't remember what the gauge is now, but it's a fingering held with a mohair, so it's not the biggest gauge, so that's actually not a lot of length in the short rows, and the short rows are there for a reason. Like, it makes neck higher, and yeah, it's sort of, the back of your neck is higher up and the front of your neck is lower down, and you want that shape. You want the short rows to push up the back so that the neck, you know, so it falls, it like follows the shape of your natural body essentially. And I like the back of my neck to be high, and I like the front of my neck to be low. I hate it when jumpers come all the way up here. And I was looking at the project pages, and I was looking at her pictures as well, and I could really tell that it was coming up to the neck and it was cutting off. And I just thought, I spent money, like I've, you know, spent money on the yarn, and if I know how to change this to fit me the way I want, like, I'm going to change it. So what I ended up doing was, instead of casting on each side, I cast on all of the stitches, and I ended up doing short rows, how I would traditionally do a drop shoulder. And I think I ended up more than doubling, or just about doubling, the length that she had graded for. So I ended up doing that for the back. And then, so for the shoulders, that's where I changed the most. It's a black yarn, so I really don't know how much you're going to be able to see. But basically, I added quite a few extra rows to make the neck deeper. And I graded it, like I rewrote it, like I changed the measurements and everything, like I changed pretty much everything. And I really love how it's turned out. Like, I think I did it perfectly for what I wanted. I'm not going to share what I did, obviously, because I don't know, I think that might be questionable. But I think it's worked out really well. And she, for like, usually you would increase one stitch at the beginning or end of, sorry, my needles are clinking, that's annoying. Usually just increase one stitch at the edge, like you can maybe knit one, make one left, knit across, for the shaping on the neck. But what she does is she increases by casting on stitches at the neck. So on some rows you could be casting on like 4 stitches, which is interesting. I've not done a construction like that, but by doing that, you end up not getting like you end up not getting like let me show you on my, as you can see on mine, like I've made like a design detail of it where you can see you've got that increase row, you can really see where the increases are. And then on this one, because they've done it in such a way where it just looks like stockinette, I really don't think you can see that. It just looks like stockinette without any increases, and I love how clean that looks, but I really disliked casting on stitches at the end of the row. It looked so messy before I picked up stitches, and that sort of hid a lot of the ugliness. So it worked out in the end, but I was so skeptical about it, and I really didn't want to do it, but I love how it's turned out. So for the neck, I actually pretty much followed the pattern exactly, but it's a fold over neck, and for the inside, I dropped the mohair and I just held it with the fingering weight. And I should talk about the yarn now. So the yarn is a yarn that I've not used before. I ended up buying it on, is it Ruto Hobby? And it's not a UK shop, online yarn shop, but it ships to the UK, and I love it. I've bought I've bought yarn from there before, and I've loved it. Like, they do quite affordable yarns, and they do yarns cheaper on their website usually than like on UK sites a lot. Like, the mohair, the drops mohair on there was quite considerably cheaper than say Wool Warehouse or something. So I got my mohair from there, and this is the fingering weight yarn that I chose. It is this brand that I'm not going to try and pronounce. And it's the Organic Trio, which is 50% organic merino wool, 25% organic silk, and organic cotton, and 25% silk. And I just thought that fibre combination was so interesting, and I was really intrigued, and I just thought I really want to use that. I love that it's organic and I've never known how to say this, meal set wools and that where they don't hurt the sheep. And yeah, it just felt like such an interesting yarn that I really wanted to use, and it was so affordable for being such high quality. If you'd have told me this was 3 times the price, I would have believed you. I think in the end, I can't remember how much it was. It's probably around £4 a ball. So really affordable, and per ball it's 230 meters. So again, it's a thinner fingering weight, but that's what I wanted for this pattern. I wanted it to be a thinner fingering weight with a mohair. I believe that's what's called for in the pattern. I can't remember, but I didn't want the fabric to be too dense, and I think this combination is perfect. In an ideal world, I would have preferred to get a softer mohair, but it just wasn't in my budget, and yeah, but I still think it's a nice combination. And this yarn, again, I've not worn it at all. I've only knit with it, but I feel like this is going to wear so nicely, and I really, really, really want to use this yarn again. I feel like it would be really nice for warmer weather garments, even though it's got the wool in it. Like, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of using plant fibres, purely because I don't find them nice to knit with. Like, they've not got any give to them, they're not bouncy typically, so it hurts my hands. And with wool, if you weave in your ends, like, the fibres grip to each other and you know that they're not going to come undone, whereas with plant yarn, it's going to come undone so much easier than with wool. And I just love the way wool wears, like the drape and how it holds its shape. And I feel like this is kind of the best of both worlds in terms of it's 50% merino, but it's got the cotton and the silk. So it's a combination of both plant and wool, and I think it's the perfect percentage of each, that it sort of brings out the best in both of them. So yeah, I feel like this would be a really good summer yarn if you like me, like working with wool, but you also want it to be suitable for a bit of a warmer weather. I think I would recommend this, but I've not worn it. I've only knit with it. But yeah, I love this yarn. I feel like I've spoken so much about this yarn, but I just love it. And yeah, I don't think there's really much else to say about this project because I've not finished it yet. I'm yet to do the arms. I think I'm gonna change the arms as well. They do not do any decreases down the arms, so the arms are really, really wide. And as I spoke about before, I kind of want to move away from that. I love how it looks, but I kind of want to move away from that because I want my jumpers going forward to be a bit more wearable. So I think I'm gonna add decreases. I know I'm gonna add decreases actually. Oh. And yeah, I'm excited to wear that. I think we're gonna get so much wear out of that. And that's everything. So thank you for watching. Again, I will have the discount for the Southside, and hopefully soon I will be doing a test call for the VV V-neck and the Love is Love socks. So if you're interested in that, please maybe subscribe if you would like to see future videos from me, or like the video, or leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!